The following program contains graphic material, including offensive language. Viewer discretion is advised.
A new warning from law enforcement of a heightened threat to the midterm elections and the safety of elected leaders.
This just hours after a violent attack of the husband of Democratic Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. 42-year-old David DePappy is accused of this attack. Police say he was looking for the speaker when he entered the home. She was in Washington, D.C. at the time. Investigators arrived at her 82-year-old husband, Paul, while he was struggling with the intruder.
Our officers observed Mr. Pelosi and the suspect both holding a hammer. The suspect pulled the hammer away from Mr. Pelosi and violently assaulted him with it.
DePappy is now in custody, facing charges including attempted murder. Investigators say DePappy had planned to tie up Paul Pelosi and wait for the speaker to return home. Mr. Pelosi was taken to the hospital. Representative Pelosi's office tells us he underwent a successful surgery to repair a skull fracture and serious injuries to his right arm and hands.
And what you've seen happen with Paul Pelosi is something that could happen to anybody that's serving in public office. And I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, it's becoming too commonplace.
Tonight's bulletin from the FBI warns of a heightened threat fueled by a rise in domestic violence extremism driven by ideological grievances. Potential targets include candidates running for public office, elected officials, election workers, and others. The FBI warns the threat will continue even after Election Day. Now, Capitol Police are considering additional protection for families of congressional leadership. There will be immediate security enhancements at the homes of top leaders.
Are you ready?
Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Nice to see everybody. Well, I hope everyone's having a great week. And I gotta say that it's been a nice couple of days here. You know, plenty of sun, not so cold. And believe it or not, they still haven't finished the sidewalk here out front. So I don't know when that's ever going to get done. But hey, you know, these people will just drag their butt, you know, even after the snow starts flying. They'll still be out there working on it. It also brings to mind, you know, here in Bangor, they're putting out an all points bulletin on anybody who's looking for a job to come work for the city, to work the plow trucks or the, you know, dump trucks or whatever, and buses. They need more people to drive because they're very short-handed. For this winter, they're very short-handed. And, you know, the only thing I can think of is that a lot of people retired who did those jobs. And now they're looking for people to replace them. And it's gotten to the point where they're also saying that we'll train you so you can earn your license in order to drive these vehicles. In other words, what they're telling you in code is that we'll just pad the fucking paperwork for you so that you'll get that license whether you trained it or not. But we need people out there. Will you stop this, Piggy? We need people out there to drive the buses. Okay. Why do you bite me all the time, Piggy? Why do you do these things? Why? Huh? Don't bite my whiskers. Don't do that to me, Cookie. Huh? Boop. Okay. All right, good going now. Attention. Yes, I know, Cookie. So yeah, they're looking for people to to drive these vehicles, and they need them bad. Okay. Now, they didn't say anything about that for this year, but I guess this year a lot of people retired. And maybe they lost a few from COVID-19, because we still got over 200,000 cases of it in Maine right now, of people sick with it. And about 2,000 people have died from it. Are going to die from, out of that 200,000, about 2,000 are going to die from it. So we still have a problem here in Maine with COVID-19, but maybe they lost some people, and maybe a lot of people retired. So all this coming at once, I guess. And here's a little interesting story. My girlfriend. I don't know why I got my sister on my mind, but my girlfriend and her mother went to Lincoln, and they found a yard sale out there. Really, this time of the year, a yard sale, but people are doing them still. And at this yard sale, she found a used thumb drive, and she thought it would be good to get that so she can use it to store, files and stuff on her thumb, take it from the computer, her laptop, and put it on a thumb drive so she could free up space. So she brings it home. She's all excited about it, and she plugs it in, and when she opens the thing up, there's stuff on it. And she finds a bunch of pictures on there, which she goes through. Apparently these people didn't delete anything on it, okay? She goes through it, and she finds a picture of a woman who looks almost exactly like my mother, okay? Believe it or not, it looks just like my mother. She sent that to me and said, Jeff, take a look at this picture and tell me that ain't your sister. Because my mother and my sister kind of look alike, okay? But she says, doesn't she look like your sister? And I said, well, that's funny, because when I first saw it, I said, who is this strange guy standing next to my mother? she was like, what? You think that looks like your mother? And I said, yes. She finds this picture on there, okay? And she said that some of the pictures go to like 2005 or something. And I said, well, my mother passed away in 2004, so, definitely couldn't be her. But it wasn't her. I knew it wasn't her. But God almighty, I mean, from a distance, I would swear to Christ it was my mother. She'd the same hairstyle, the same face, the eyes. My God. And yeah, I could see my sister in there too, because like I said, my mother and my sister had the same kind of look. Just like people would say that I look like a lot like my father did at my age and stuff. So anyway, after she was going through all this stuff on her new thumb drive, she texts me back a few minutes later and says that her thumb drive is humming and it won't stop. And I said, that's weird. So she took it out, put it back in, it started humming, and this time it was louder, and now it hums even when the thumb drive isn't in there. And I was like, uh-oh. I told Melissa, something, it was probably a virus on that damn thumb drive, and that's why they were getting rid of it. Or they probably couldn't delete the stuff that was on there because that thumb drive was infected. Well, now she's all worried. Now she's got this faulty thumb drive, which she, won't use now because she's afraid that it's already ruined her computer. She's trying to talk to somebody to help her figure out how to fix it. I told her about trying to restore it to a previous time, and she said it doesn't have that feature. And I said, well, how about restoring it to the beginning, the factory specs? And she said, well, she'd lose everything on her computer, that she's got all her pictures. And will you quit biting me? Stop at you. She would lose all the pictures that she's got. Okay? So, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you for this, kitty. You're just going to get out. So, she's got I've never heard of a problem like this happen. Ow, Jesus! I've never heard anybody have a problem like this with their with a thumb drive, where it was doing something like that, And ow, damn it! Stop it! Jeez. Oh boy. As if I didn't play with her enough already today. All right. So yeah, I mean, I've never heard of anybody having a thumb drive that would do something like that to their computer. Okay, that's the first. That's definitely a first. I don't know how she can fix it, but she's afraid of losing everything on her laptop because she stores like over 1,000 some odd pictures on the damn thing. Yeah. Who are you? And you know, that's the reason why she bought that, was to have space to put all that stuff, right? Oh, so anyway, enough of that. Anyway, so Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked early this morning around 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. Some guy kept pounding on the fucking door. He goes to answer it, and the guy's in there saying, where's Pelosi? Where's Nancy Pelosi? And he gets into a fight with the guy. And the police show up, and you know, they get this guy. Luckily, no shots. He didn't have a gun. He had some other thing. I guess a bat or some goddamn thing that he was beating the guy with. Paul Pelosi, who's an 82-year-old guy, by the way. Okay. He's going to make a full recovery, so apparently he wasn't too badly hurt. But, you know, the guy that attacked him, David DePappy, he's 42 years old, and the media, for some reason, didn't want to, what they usually do, jump into what's the motivation and kind of, you know, start making assumptions, okay, which is something they typically have done over in the past. You know, immediately they start to piece together a conspiracy or some goddamn thing. Well, they didn't do that this time, which was weird. Nothing came out about a possible motive until about 1 or 12 this afternoon, about 1. And they said that the police had went to the guy's home, and I guess they went through his computer, which is like the, you know, first step now in modern investigation, is to go into the person's computer, and they found that, you know, he hangs around in a lot of extreme right-wing websites and stuff, and you know, he gets a lot of he you know, he's engaged a lot in these different like what do they call that shit, QAnon stuff, reading all that crap. People had said that he's an avid believer that Trump was cheated out of an election. And, you know, basically he's a Trumpster, okay? But a very violent one, which makes him even more Trumpster than most, because he's willing to cross that line. And, you know, my reaction is that, you know, in every election, the October before November is always something happens. You'll find throughout history in the elections in our country that the October before November always has some kind of weird thing that happens during, you know, just before people vote. And my question is this some sort of convoluted October surprise that was drummed up by a small faction in the, you know, in the right wing? Okay, or was this generally just somebody who waited until just this moment to decide to flip his lid and do what he did to go after me? I mean, you know what I'm saying? He had all year long to go after Nancy Pelosi in this fashion. But he picks, you know, the last week of October to go and do this thing early in the morning where Nancy Pelosi lives. And so I have to wonder, you know, look, I don't know where she lives. I don't know how easy it is to find the address of people who serve our government, okay? And maybe it is easier than I think, but because I've never looked up anyone's address that works for the government, okay? I always contact them at their office. I don't go to their house. I don't mail letters to people who live there because I don't know where they are. I don't know where they fucking live. Now, I've been in Virginia near Washington, D.C., and there is a community outside of the city that looks like cookie cutter mansion houses. Okay, they all look the same, but they all look like big immaculate mansions. Well, I was told that a lot of representatives live in these places, and they're only temporary housing for certain people, and that's not like their real home. It's almost like a very expensive rent. Okay, some of them live there, but I couldn't tell you who. And it's not like they put their fucking name on the door. So how this guy found out where Nancy Pelosi lives is, I don't know. It's a mystery. You would think that a person would have, herself protected, at least have some guards around, especially after what happened on January the 6th. That she would have some kind of security around her place to protect her from any of these psychos that are out there looking to finish what they started on January the 6th. So, I was kind of surprised, really. Let me give you, for instance, John F. Kennedy. If somebody wanted to kill him, they probably could have gone to, where he lived, right? And stuff like, or something like that to make it easier. But no, they had to wait till he was in a car and he was driving through an area that they knew he would be, because it was public knowledge, and then they would try, But she was at home, okay? And if you're smart and you work for the government, you're not going to tell anybody where the fuck you live, especially if you're a political figure, right? Because you don't want kooks coming up to your doorstep all the time and throwing rocks at you or something, right? You want to have some place of sanctuary. So like I said, I can't understand how this guy figured out her address, unless it was given to him by somebody on the inside, somebody in the Republican Party who knew where she lived, So I have to wonder, it goes through my mind, how is this? Is this an October surprise, some convoluted October surprise by the Trumpsters, or is this some coincidence that happened, that this guy just happened to know where she lived and just happened to be able to get to the front door without anybody there to stop him? Just happened to beat the shit out of her husband, and then, they go to this guy's place and they find all kinds of, anti-democratic sites and, pro-Trump's this and pro-QAnon that. Doesn't it seem like it was all, kind of like, it feels planned. It feels like it was all planned somehow, okay? Like there was something behind this other than this guy, who apparently is considered a complete and utter psycho, all right? What they label him as. So, does it smell rotten? Yeah, it does smell rotten. And the timing of it is suspicious, okay? Just, 10 days before the election, this shit happens, okay? So I feel like, it's true to form what they say about every October before November during an election year, you're going to have some bullshit that takes place just prior to voting. Okay? And if you don't believe me, go through the history, research it. And just go back in increments and find out what weird things occurred in October before a November in an election year. It'll be pretty interesting. And on top of that, you got, interestingly enough, since we are 10 days out from an election already, and it hasn't gone by fast enough for me, but I'm just itching for it. The Republicans have already set out more than 100 election lawsuits to plague the midterm elections and beyond. They've already gone through this. They've already done 100, and the election hasn't happened yet, and they've already got lawsuits out there, 100 of them. Okay, legal challenges to the fucking results before they're even counted and in. So let me tell you something. If there's any more of a big smoking gun that the Republicans plan on cheating their asses off next in 10 days over this damn election, there's your smoking gun right there. The fact that they're already starting the process right now, as soon as possible, they're already starting the process, and they've got no grounds and all these 100 lawsuits yet to be able to go and say, oh, they're cheating, the Democrats are cheating. they haven't. The election hasn't started yet, so they need proof to show that cheating has occurred, right? They've got none. So how can they have a lawsuit over things that haven't been done yet? That's a very interesting legal strategy, I have to say. And why they can do that, I'll never know. It's like suing somebody for a car accident that they haven't done yet. And let me read the article here from the Washington Examiner. Kayleen Deese wrote this today. As Election Day approaches, more than 100 election-related lawsuits have been filed nationwide to sow voter confusion and tee up courtroom battles that could affect elections beyond 2022. Since at least the 2018 midterm election cycle, almost every state now has amended election laws, including Republican efforts to tighten election security and Democratic measures to expand voting access and weaken some restrictions that voting advocates say enhance turnout and minimize difficulties for minority constituents. Now, the most litigation ever filed before an election is setting the stage for a potentially divisive post-election political field. Many of the GOP-led challenges seek to challenge new rules for mail-in voting, early voting, vote counting, and voter registration. Omar Ocha, a Texas-based attorney and former federal law clerk, told the Washington Examiner there are nearly 30 states with ongoing litigation related to election laws stemming from 2020 challenges. The election experts say the increase in election litigation points back to the Supreme Court's notorious ruling in the 2000 case Bush v. Gore, while lawsuits reached peak prominence and intensity after former President Donald Trump's 2020 election defeat, which he contested. And in a year that was already plagued with pre-election court challenges to mail-in ballot rules in Pennsylvania and disputes regarding absentee ballot deadlines in Michigan and Georgia. The truth is, quote, "The truth is there's always been election litigation throughout the country's history for a variety of reasons, but now it seems to be just kind of a different subject matter, and that's voter access to elections," unquote, Ocha said. Here are the states where court litigation is having a major impact on election rules. Wisconsin, in-person early voting began on Tuesday in Wisconsin, a state that is enduring ongoing lawsuits inspired in part by Republicans attempting to make absentee voting more difficult following Trump's 2020 loss. Arizona. Some of the most recent litigation filed in Arizona came this week in a pair of lawsuits attempting to stop people from intimidating voters over their use of drop boxes. The litigation was filed on behalf of a left-of-center group, Voto Latino, and the Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans, citing concerns over a group of individuals who were, quote, filming and photographing voters as they approached the drop box outside of the Maricopa County's Mesa Juvenile Court, unquote, accusing some voters of being ballot mules, unquote. Michigan. Michigan's Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson lost a legal challenge last week brought by the Republican National Committee, resulting in a judge invalidating new instruction manuals for election challengers created by the Bureau of Elections. Some of the instructions, such as a ban on the use of electronic devices at absentee counting boards, contradicted the law or failed to go through the proper rulemaking procedure with input from the public and state lawmakers. Pennsylvania. The RNC and a coalition of GOP groups have also filed a lawsuit that is still under consideration in Pennsylvania over absentee ballots, dating, and whether outside parties can be allowed to examine voting machines. North Carolina, the Supreme Court is slated to hear arguments in December over a highly contentious legal challenge brought by North Carolina GOP leaders that could upend states' courts' ability to regulate federal elections. The Justice Department filed an amicus brief to the High Court on Wednesday asking the justices to reject the independent state legislature theory, saying it would lead to, quote, extraordinarily disruptive consequences, unquote, if the 6-3 conservative majority embraces the theory. So, yeah, like you see here, what I think is going on is that they start these processes before the election. So when the election actually happens, they'll pull out this case they've already started and say, well, we can't certify this vote until this case is resolved. You know, basically what they'll do is the vote will be like either suspended or simply the results of the voting will be rejected, especially if the vote doesn't go their way. You know, if the Republican doesn't win, they'll have the lawsuit to fall back on and use as an excuse to say we can't certify the votes in the state because we have this pending legal battle going on right now that's not going to be resolved for a time. Okay, that's going to put everybody who won any seats on hold, perpetual hold, until these things are done. So it's like, we're going to have a session where not everybody is going to be holding a seat in January because they're still going to be waiting in the sidelines for a court battle to be ended. That's what I think they're doing. This is a way of, it's not so much contesting the results of an election in the state so much as it is putting everything on, put the brakes on the whole thing until the court can resolve some case they submitted 10 days before the election. Okay, and maybe that's why they waited until just 10 days before the election, because they didn't want there to be a chance for a decision to come down too soon where they wouldn't, they couldn't use it. Okay, they probably know they don't have a chance with some of this stuff, so that's why they got it going. It's called, delaying, buying time, doing whatever it takes to slow down the process, to make it, more difficult should the Democrats win in a huge tsunami of blue votes, that it's still going to put a crowbar or a monkey wrench in the gearbox, essentially, to keep things from happening. And it's like what Tom Hartman had said in a show, that they're using the courts now as a weapon to hold on to power. Okay. To make, to run out the clock on situations, so that way they can get back what they want. And whenever they don't win now, the answer is going to be we're not going to accept it. We're going to challenge it, and that process takes a long time to go through. So it's just another delay tactic. That's what they're reduced to now, the Republican Party, because so many people now are against them. Almost 70% of the country sides with Biden, or the Democrats rather, on their agenda, while the rest are still, clinging to, a Republican win in some way or another. Okay. And believe me, it's going to be some way or another kind of a victory for them, because it's not going to be honest. It's not going to be above board, because they can't win honestly. They can't win by playing by the rules anymore. The game is just too much for them. It's overwhelming because they've been so bad at playing it that now that, they just have nothing left but to cheat their way through it. And, what I'm saying is, I hope the Democrats have a countermeasure in place, so that way if these things are challenged, they can provide proof enough to back up their argument that these are all tactics designed to slow down government's ability to be able to function, or almost stop it from functioning. Okay, and that's what they're trying to do here. Let's go to a commercial break.
This is me. This is me.
This is me.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Ruth McLaughlin, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
Bit by bit, excuse by excuse, we're putting Donald Trump above the law. We are rendering indefensible conduct normal, legal, and appropriate, as though he were a king. And now, Donald Trump has been suggesting, not even subtly, that any legal action against him could result in violence.
I think if it happened, I think you'd have problems in this country, the likes of which perhaps we've never seen before. I don't think the people of the United States would stand for it.
Our former president is apparently now suggesting that if he is prosecuted, his supporters should stand up to our constitutional order and the rule of law. Stand up and through whatever means are needed, prevent his prosecution. Prevent the application of the law.
What kind of problems, Mr. President?
I think they'd have big problems. Big problems. I just don't think they'd stand for it.
It is hard to see this as anything but a direct threat to our Constitution, to our Republic, and a credible one at that. One can only wonder, is this where the Republican Party will go next? That prosecution is inappropriate because MAGA will violently oppose it.
Have you ever wondered why cats randomly bite your hand when petting them? Well, here's why. This behavior is called petting aggression and is most common in younger cats. Sometimes the repetitive stroking stimulates hunting behavioral instincts to them. Not meaning that they want to tear your hand apart, but cats' instincts are to catch anything that
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, so as I was saying through this segment, Republicans are trying to find every trick in the book to be able to slow down, divert, whatever it takes to make this election in November to be, inconsequential, to dilute it as much as they can in order to give themselves the chance to be able to win a presidency after Biden, okay? Somebody had said that, in the past, everybody knew that dirty tricks could be played on both sides going through an election cycle, okay? And it was usually something that, was like, oh, he was caught cheating with a woman or something like that, or he was doing drugs at a point in his life, or some land deal was fraudulent, or there was always things like that. It came up just prior to an election, the October surprise thing I was talking about, okay? Things like that. But nowadays, those things weren't bad enough because, in the past they didn't really work that well, okay? Especially with Bill Clinton, when they went after him for his adultery and stuff like that, his poll numbers actually went up. His approval numbers when the Republicans were after him, which they couldn't understand. But when you go after somebody, as they did with Bill Clinton, you make him out to be, the poor victim, when most of them didn't even think that was such a big issue to begin with to go after a president for, because more Americans were committing adultery than they could, even Republicans, a lot of men in America were out there screwing around on their wives, so, it would be pretty hypocritical for all these people to come out and crucify Bill Clinton over it. So all it did was make him a stronger political figure at the end, and that's why he got away from the impeachment. Okay, but such things like that can backfire. So I think over the years they've realized that if we're going to actually get somebody, we're going to have to skip all that mudslinging shit and go right to the crux of the matter, which is the election itself. Okay, and that's that's about who's counting the ballots, and how do we discourage people from voting? How do we set the system up to take as many people out of the voting game as we can? Like DeSantis had, there was people that were prison, inmates in prison who got out and were told that because they paid their debt to society, they were able to vote in an election, okay? And so when these people went to register to vote, they were visited by the police and were arrested. And they had quite a few people, quite a few ex-inmates were arrested and told that, you can't vote. And because you registered, you broke the law. And so all these people were punished. And, Ron DeSantis goes out on TV and says, oh, well, these first 20 people that we arrested is just the beginning. We're going to go after a whole lot more. After they were already told that they could vote, and they had the law on their side that they were able to vote, this shit happened. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, that was another way. That was a way, not another way, but a way to get people out from voting. People, they don't want voting. So, they cut the numbers down. Okay, the people who are not registered or whatever or something like that will get these things in the mail saying, you know, we don't have your registration information or something, where they come up with some reason to make them unable to vote, or they don't find out until they go to vote that their name isn't on the list, you know, and even though they remember registering, for some reason it ain't there and they're turned away. So in these Republican areas of the country, they're doing these little silly little games to try to get people unable to vote. And some people say, well, that means it'd be turning away Republicans. Well, that's true, but they're willing to accept the loss in numbers for Republicans because they know it'll take out more Democrats as a result. Okay, for every one Republican that's denied voting, you're taking out maybe 5 or 6 Democrats who aren't going to be voting either. And to them, that's acceptable. Okay, so when they redistrict, that's what they're looking at. By diluting the Democrat votes, you know, you basically make the region more red than it was before, because you're drawing the lines in this convoluted puzzle-looking thing of what is considered a you know, a district. And some people say that it's gotten so accurate that it goes right down to the friggin' block of where a house is sitting. That's how close the lines are, and that's ridiculous. Okay, it used to be that, you know, they would draw that out by hand. You know, it would be a wide, you know, a wide pattern. But now the patterns for these districts, for Republican districts, they look like little tiny countries. You know, where they're going around every little home that's, you know, in the narrow, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to draw in all the Republicans into a district, okay? So that way it's bigger, has more numbers, so that way the Democrat areas just don't have, you know, they got nothing. So, yeah, I mean, you look at those redistricting maps today, and it's laughable how they've rigged those things out. And the fact that they're allowed to do that, to me, is a mystery. Why they're allowed to do that. It's like saying every year we're going to redraw the state to encompass more people in our population. You know, like, so that way we can get more state aid. Well, you know, we'll take more people from this state or this state, you know, and we'll just, you know, would that be illegal? Of course not. It wouldn't be illegal, because you're dealing with the boundaries of the state. So why is it legal to redraw a district, you know, in that fashion? Because it's not just your party you're affecting, you're also affecting the entire government with the same procedure, okay? Because what you're redrawing is going to ultimately affect the voting position in days to come of who gets what. You know, it just, you know, it can't possibly be legal, for the same reason why you wouldn't redraw your state to include more people in the population, so you could benefit from that in some way. Okay, so I feel like that they need to stop that. They need to say, look, that's it. No more redrawing shit. Okay, it stays the way it was. Okay, and that's it. So that's one thing. Let's see. Here's this. Well, let me tell you something. What happened here to me a few days ago. Remember I was telling you about how there's like a 30-ton limit on a bridge over in Old Town. Well, was it 4:30 or 5 o'clock rush hour time around here? I was going into Old Town to my storage unit that I have over there, and I went on the interstate, got off the interstate on Orono exit, and I went down in that direction. And that was bumper to bumper all the way to the stoplight at McDonald's, which is across the bridge, that particular bridge. Well, inching along. Finally, I got to the bridge, and I'm sitting on the bridge, okay? And as I was sitting there, I could feel the bridge move. I shit you not, okay? Now, I know bridges are supposed to move a little bit to give, because if you have a bridge and it's built too tight, the chances of the thing snapping in half is greater than if you built the bridge and you didn't give it some kind of, you know, wiggle, you know, to support the weight. But the fact that this bridge was moving and was going up and down, because there weren't no big trucks on it. Okay, they can't go across that bridge anymore now. It's you know, it's posted. It's only cars and pickups, you know, regular cars. And still, with all those cars that were going across, I could feel the bridge bouncing. And I'm thinking, well, is 30 tons enough? I mean, you know, because here's the thing: you got all these vehicles going across that damn bridge. They know the bridge is weak. People sitting on the bridge can feel it moving. To me, that seems like, well, you know, maybe 30 tons is too much. Maybe 30 tons was too much to say that bridge was safe at that level, because, you know, it's going across your mind that, hey, this, you know, it's moving. Maybe you didn't notice it before until they put the posting there of the signs, and now you're noticing it. You know what I'm getting at? I mean, it's like it didn't matter to you before when the bridge would be bouncing when trucks were going across it. But now that you're sitting there on a bridge that's posted for a 30-ton weight limit and it's bouncing like that, it's like sitting in a canoe in the middle of the ocean and you're surrounded by sharks. Okay? You feel like this goddamn thing is going to snap right out. Okay? Now, I'm not saying I'm panicking and all that, but the thought does cross your mind. You know, that, you know, you're going across a bridge here and you're stopped on it. You can't move any further. You're stopped on this bridge and you feel the traffic going by and it's just sitting there bouncing, bounce, bounce, bounce. After it's been declared that the bridge is not as strong as it used to be, and you know, it's got a 30-ton weight limit on it. How do we know that it can even hold 30 tons, that they just didn't, you know? All I'm saying is that it doesn't bode well for anybody that gives any thought to that sitting on that bridge. So anyway, there's this article here from Salon. It's an op-ed piece by Chauncey De Vega. It was published today, entitled, "We regret to inform you that Donald Trump is cashing in on white America." Donald Trump is a white terrorist. This is true in both the literal sense and on a more metaphorical level. As part of Trump's coup plot, he incited his followers to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. It's also true that throughout his presidency and beyond, Trump and his agents have used the propaganda tactic known as, quote, stochastic terrorism, unquote, in which a leader encourages violence while maintaining vaguely plausible deniability. This is part of a larger pattern of behavior. Trump's behavior and rhetoric repeatedly emphasize destruction, violence, conspiracy theories, apocalyptic imagery, and threats of other dire outcomes if he and his neo-fascist movement are not returned to power. Trump effectively channels the ways that whiteness, which was invented with European colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade, has functioned as a force of terror, violence, intimidation, and existential threat against black and brown people all over the world. One of Trump's favorite tactics is white victimology. His ability to frighten white people about their personal and collective safety and to present himself as their protector and savior is one of his greatest powers. As shown in a recent fundraising email, Donald Trump is using that dark and evil power to great effect. That email begins with the ominous phrase, quote, "We regret to inform you," unquote, which is familiar to many Americans who have lost family members and other loved ones in service to their country. Those words, however, simply direct users to a site where Trump solicits donations for his fascist campaign, or just as likely his PAC and legal defense fund. That Trump and his acolytes would use such a tactic as part of their fascist grift, when in reality, Trump despises all the best aspects of America as a nation and society, is vile even by his standards. Let us not forget that this man avoided military service during the Vietnam War by having a doctor lie for him about non-existent bone spurs, or that he mocked Senator John McCain, a genuine war hero, and Vietnam POW who refused to abandon his men in the infamous Hanoi Hilton as a quote-unquote loser, saying, quote, "I like people that weren't captured," unquote. Credible reporting also suggests that Trump has called U.S. troops killed in combat, quote, "losers," unquote, and quote-unquote suckers. The GOP's Ayn Rand death cult, Trump's party, is literally killing the American people, but condemning Trump's behavior is in no way sufficient to defeat him and the neo-fascist threat he represents. You can't shame those who have no shame. Trump and the current Republican Party have repeatedly shown that they do not care about human decency or virtue. They worship power above everything else and delight in provoking outrage and disgust among their political opponents and decent people in general. Democrats all too eagerly walk into this trap and then wonder why they are losing the battle to save American democracy. Rick Wilson, the prominent Republican strategist turned, quote, never Trumper, unquote, explained this to me in our recent Salon interview. Quote, "We're in a post-shame world, a post-hypocrisy environment. You can't shame Republicans anymore," unquote. The political work of stopping Donald Trump and the Republican fascists requires understanding how and why their appeals to fear, violence, and terror are so effective, and then developing the strategy and tactics to counter them. White Americans who have greater anxieties about death are more likely to support Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Authoritarians are also more fearful of social change, difference, ambiguity, and those outside their quote-unquote tribe. What do we know? Social psychologists and other researchers have repeatedly shown that white Americans who have greater anxieties about death are more likely to support Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Republicans and other conservatives are also more likely to exhibit social dominance behavior and to have authoritarian personalities. Such personality types and cognitive orientations translate into a tendency to fixate on negative and frightening images and concepts. Authoritarians and others driven by social dominance behavior are also more fearful of social change, difference, ambiguity, and those outside their quote-unquote tribe and group, close family, and imagined community. Social scientists have shown that the white supremacists, quote, great replacement, unquote, conspiracy theory is believed by a majority of Republicans and Trumpists. This is rooted in the fiction that white people are in danger of annihilation or imminent destruction by black and brown people. It has motivated numerous violent crimes, including the massacre by a white supremacist of 10 black people in a Buffalo supermarket last May. White right-wing evangelicals and Christian nationalists are the most loyal members of the Republican base and Trump's most enthusiastic supporters. Their religious mythology emphasizes end times and other eschatologic logical fantasies and magical thinking, focused on visions of widespread destruction, death, and calamity. Some believers actually hope to see mass death and suffering as a sign of the coming rapture and their eternal salvation. Social demographers have repeatedly shown that there is actually more early death, suicide, murder, criminality, poverty, prescription drug abuse, and other forms of human misery and suffering on a per capita basis in red state America than in more cosmopolitan, progressive, affluent, and dynamic blue cities and regions. Because so many Trumpists and conservatives, especially in rural America, are surrounded by suffering, they are hypersensitive to threat and anxiety about their own mortality. Moreover, many people who live in damaged red state communities incorrectly generalize that the entire country is suffering in the same way they are. Such fears and anxieties about death and mortality are reinforced and amplified throughout the right-wing echo chamber. The resulting impact becomes even more intense because so many Americans are locked in ideological and cultural silos and rarely communicate or have any meaningful contact with those who possess different values. In a new essay for The Nation, historian Stephen Barry explains how whiteness, violence, rage, and fear came together on January the 6th. Quote, "I don't know something could be so terrifying and embarrassing at the same time, unquote, tweeted the comedian Jess Dweck. The riot may have been a saturnalia of stupid, but we need to take it seriously. There is abroad in the land an entitled minority marinating in grievance, convinced that something is being stolen from them. What is being stolen? An election, a way of life, a birthright, a lost cause. Christmas doesn't matter. Always it is a defensive white male fantasy based on insecurity, helplessness, and rage. At the base of most contemporary American conspiracy theorists is a white male fantasy that indulges the feeling of being aggrieved, abused, dominated, or violated, precisely to justify the legitimacy of the ensuing white male vengeance and demonstration of power and control. Nothing tastes better in the white male mouth than indignation, not a job and not a paycheck. The historian Gordon Fraser calls it the, quote, libidinal pleasures of paranoia, unquote, and traces the impulse from the, quote, Illuminati crisis, unquote, in 1798 to Pizzagate in 2016. White fears of annihilation, destruction, and obsolescence set against an increasingly diverse society are fueled by how the Republican Party and larger conservative movements have for decades advocated and enacted policies that have literally caused physical and emotional harm to their own voters. As a practical matter, this perverse incentive structure functions to create more white rage and white despair at the system, elites, big government, and so on, which Republicans weaponize and redirect against black and brown people and anyone else deemed to be the other or somehow un-American. If working class whites fear annihilation and absolence, that's not entirely irrational. For decades, Republicans have advocated and enacted policies that harm their own voters. This is an old American story built on divide and conquer tactics and the, quote, psychological wages of whiteness, unquote. White people with money and power know how easy it is to manipulate poor and working class white people through appeals to white supremacy, racial resentment, entitlement, and fear. In the immortal words of Lyndon Johnson, quote, if you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to knock down on and he'll empty his pockets for you, unquote. In that sense, Trump and his Republican fascists are not doing anything new. Sinclair Lewis famously warned that fascism would come to America wrapped in a flag and carrying a cross. That was prophetic. One can't expect Lewis to have predicted that the MAGA hats, instead of running away from Trump and what he represents, tens of millions of white Americans are instead cheering him on as their herald hero and savior. Such mass delusions are a defining feature of fascism and other such destructive political ideologues and visions. America is being consumed by a compulsion towards self-destruction. Time is running out. Will the American people choose life or death? They will soon find out. And more importantly, will Americans choose Trump or America? Because that's really what this election next month is really about, where we want to go. I mean, are Americans going to turn their back on America and side with Donald Trump? You know, because there's certainly a good portion of Americans will, which, you know, you could say they're traitors, and by, you know, many respects they are traitors. But then at the same time, there's no law that says people can't disagree with their government. We just don't want people disagreeing with their government by believing lies. You know, it'd be nice to disagree with the government if it was based in fact, okay, or on things that are going on. But these people often don't have facts to back up the reasons why they don't like Biden, or they don't like Democrats, or they don't like democracy, or they don't like this country. What they come up with is stickman talking points. You know, they don't have a fact or a point of view that's really based in anything real. Okay, it's just, you know, it's just a lot of talk and a lot of you know, fictionalization to back up a point of view that they have. And it's usually given to them by people at the top in their party who are deceiving them and misleading them And the proof that they do that is because they haven't any facts to give them, their voters, in order to give them a standing point to hold the line, okay? They can't hold the line because there is no line, all right? That's why they can't win arguments. That's why they don't even want to debate Democrats in this cycle, this election cycle. They would rather not. And their attitude against, standing toe-to-toe on the stage with Democrats is just ignore the Democrats and don't acknowledge they're even there. They don't want to talk because they can't stand against facts. Democrats come to these debates with facts. And whenever a Republican says something and it doesn't line up to what we know about them, the Democrats will put that fact in their face and they trip and stumble all over it, okay? They weren't going to do that this time. You had one there that didn't even want to show up for a debate, okay? Herschel Walker didn't even show up for a second debate, because he got licked so bad in the first one, he wouldn't come back to the second one. And here earlier, yesterday, they found out there's another woman that he gave money to have an abortion. I mean, the amounts of friggin' character staining this guy's got on himself ought to be enough to convince people that this is not the guy you want in your political corner. He's a bad cat. He's got no character. Okay, you guys didn't even like Bill Clinton for going to sleep with a hairdresser while he was married, and you said, "Oh, we can't stand him. We don't want him as president." Well, why are you standing with Herschel Walker? Here's a guy that's done everything that he said he didn't support. Okay, he's all against abortion, and yet he's paid how many women now to get abortions? And yet these people are still standing in his corner. Okay, so don't talk to me or don't talk to Democrats at all about, family values and all this shit, okay? Because you obviously don't agree or don't even believe in that stuff yourself. All right, you're the last people in the world that ought to be talking about that. But that's what they have now running in their party, are these people that are they have absolutely no honorable characteristics. None of them. Not a single one of them do. And yet that seems to me matter not to these Republican voters. They don't care that their candidates don't have any moral character. Even though at one time moral character was a must. If you're going to vote for a politician, they got to be, very loyal and all this to their marriages and all this stuff. Now, that doesn't sell anymore now because American people aren't buying that argument because they know that's not the way people really are. And so Republicans are having to be hypocritical to the things they used to stand for now, which is why their party doesn't have any fucking muscle. A party with no agenda is not a party worth listening to, okay? And if their agenda has nothing good to do with this country to help us to be a stronger nation, then what are they there for? I mean, if you're going to be a politician, you got to be there to help out America, right? You're there to work for the country. You're not there to work for yourself. You're not there to steal money from people. That's not what you're there for. If you want to do that, go put a hood on, get yourself a gun, wear all black, and start robbing neighborhoods. I mean, that's what you are. I mean, all you're doing is you're wearing a suit and a tie, and you're doing this stuff out in the open, and you got a team of lawyers to protect you from when you get caught. But if you want to be a thief and you want to be a crook, then please get out of government and just go out on the street and do your thing, okay? Christ, take your chances. Go and rob. But don't sit here and come to the government with, and pretend that, you can fall into a sewer and come up with 10 gold watches in each arm. Fuck that. We know that's not true. At least all of us with a brain know it's not true. Those that don't, well, hell, they'll believe anything. They still believe in Santa Claus, for Christ's sake. Okay, well, that's it for today, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. So please keep your ears open to COVID-19 news in your local area and monkeypox. Subscribe and comment to these videos so that I get a feel on what you guys want to hear or have any opinion about. And please treat each other fairly and don't be vicious to one another, because when you do that, you just perpetuate a societal problem that has gotten out of control. So I'll talk to you all later. Take care.